Grammar of to ieba is mean that speaking of when you talk of when you say if it were the case that dot or something. In Japanese, when you use the grammar of to ieba, you can use the now only. And that means you should begin by the noun and after that followed by to ieba. And in here, you can, when you write, you can write in hiragana or in kanji as you see here for ieba. It no problem, just depend to you. But actually, in Japanese, they use in kanji, but you just the beginner, you can use in hiragana as the second one. So when you say to ieba in Japanese, that means you mention about something, or you speaking, or you talking about something, and you take that to be the case or example. You see here, when you use to ieba, you can say like speaking of, like when you talk of, like when you say, if it were in the case that something like this, that means you say something to be example. Now let's learn how to change. In here, if you have kankoku is the noun. It means Korea, South Korea, right? South Korea in Japanese they say kankoku. But when you use with to ieba, we can use like this, kankoku, and after that followed by to ieba, which means we talk about South Korea. So now let's see some sample together. ベトナムといえばバイクが多いですね。ベトナムといえばバイクが多いですね。Which means that speaking of Vietnam, there are a lot of bikes. Speaking of Vietnam, there are a lot of bikes. In this case, we say that in this sentence, we see that we have the noun. In here, our noun is Vietnam. Vietnam is mean Vietnam. And after that, we follow by to ieba, which means that if we talk about Vietnam, do you think about bikes, right? Motorbike. In many people, when you think about Vietnam, in your idea view have many things such as motorbike, many motorbikes in your imagine, right? So in the case like this, you can say ベトナムといえばバイクが多いですね which means that speaking of Vietnam, there are a lot of bikes or there are so many motorbikes, right? That means when you talking Vietnam, that in your brain, you just have only a motorbike. So in Japanese, you can say like this. Next example. 大阪の食べ物といえばたこ焼きです。大阪の食べ物といえばたこ焼きです。Which means, speaking of Osaka food, takoyaki comes to mind. Speaking of Osaka food, takoyaki comes to mind. In here, you see that in our noun in this sentence, it means tabemono, right? Tabemono is mean food, right? But in here they say Osaka no tabemono, which means the food in Osaka. To ieba, which means that if we're talking about the Osaka food, right? Or if we're speaking about Osaka food, takoyaki comes to mind. That means if you ask about somebody in Osaka or anybody that have lived in Osaka for several years or many years, they will say that in Osaka is the first food is takoyaki, right? So if you talk with anybody in their brain, they just have only takoyaki. That means If something like this, you can explain in Japanese sentence like Osaka no tabemono to ieba. If we talking about the food in Osaka, takoyaki is come to mind, something like this. The example, hon to ieba kore o yonda ka? Hon o to ieba kore o yonda ka? Which means, speaking of books, have you read this one? Speaking of books, have you read this one? Which means that in this sentence we say we have the noun hon. Hon is mean book or textbook. And after that we follow by to ieba, which means if we're talking about books, right? Kore o yonda ka? Have you read this one? Kore is mean this one. Kore o yonda ka? Which means have you read this one? In this sentence, you say when you are talking about book in Japanese, right? Maybe it have it might have many books, but in many books, one of that might be some book might be famous, right? So it just say about the title of the book, many people will know. So in this case, you can say, have you read this one? Something that in this case you can just show to another party or show to the person that you're talking with. So in here they say, hon to ieba kore o yonda ka? Which means that if you're talking about book, have you read this one? The next example, Nihon no natsu to ieba totemo atsui desu. 日本の夏といえばとても暑いです。Which means, speaking of summer in Japan, is extremely hot. Speaking of summer in Japan, is extremely hot. In here, our noun is natsu, right? But natsu is mean the summer, and where Nihon is mean the summer in Japan. To ieba is mean if we're talking about this summer in Japan. If we say about the summer in Japan, right, that means if we talk about something, right, something, in here we say summer in Japan. Totemo atsui desu. Really extremely hot or really hot. That means when you imagine about the summer in Japan, you in your brain just have only the hot thing, really hot. Will you help me? Something like this. So there is no any other one perfectly or better than the hot, right? So when you say about the summer in Japan, in your opinion, just have only the hot or really hot, or you just feeling really hot. So you can say totemo atsui. 日本の夏といえばとても暑いです。Something like this. So I hope that you understand about how to use the grammar of といえば。といえば that means we will talk about something or we talk about some story, right? And you take one of that story to talk. For example, we talk about the summer in Japan. You take the example of hot or extremely hot to be the represent right, to be the represent of the story that we're talking about.